So when you notice that you are triggered, and it could even be like a day later, 2 days later, okay? I want to invite you to give yourself some space to notice, right? Okay, take yourself back there. What was happening? What was said or done around me that I maybe took offense to, that I was triggered by, that I had a response to? And then allow yourself to like really sink into that and take some deep breaths and ask yourself, what was I feeling? So maybe I was feeling offended, right? Maybe I was embarrassed. Maybe I was hurt. Maybe I felt betrayed. Use one of those feeling wheels to determine what was it that you were feeling, or even if you don't want to do that, what 3 words come to mind for you? It doesn't necessarily have to be a feeling word. What 3 things come to mind for you? And then ask yourself, when was the first time that I remember feeling that way? And if you've done this before, even with that same emotion, then ask yourself, when is another time that I remember feeling that way? And take yourself back to that situation, because you'll be surprised how much things that happened decades ago are impacting the way that you're responding today. So take yourself back there in your mind, in your imagination. And this is why, because your brain cannot determine the difference between what you have imagined and what actually happened. And so the more that we can have thoughts, positive thoughts in our brain, positive situations, scenarios in our brain, the more of those memories your brain has to go back to. Healing memories that will begin to replace the hurtful memories. So you can bring your adult self into that. And I've done that with some of you inside of like meditations. And there are meditations inside of the Renewed program that will walk you through that, how to, imagine your adult self going up to that little girl. What do you want to say to her? Okay, so that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is, maybe it was a man that hurt you, that said something to you. Maybe it was your father, right? So you can, in that situation, do a couple things. One, you can imagine somebody that has been like a father type figure to you, or somebody that you really admire and respect. It could be a former teacher, a coach, a neighbor, a family friend, somebody that and they don't have to be perfect, because guess what? There is no perfect person, right? There is none. But in your interactions with that person, they were a safe person. They saw you, they loved you, they cared about you, or that's how you interpreted them, right? So you can imagine that person coming into that memory with you. And what would they have said? What would they have said and done in that situation? And see that through. How does that feel in your body? And then a third way is to bring in God or Jesus. And if that's something that you're comfortable with, just inviting him into that memory and saying something like, God, you say that you love me. What would that look like in that situation? How would you have handled that if you were my dad? If you were my brother? If you were that boy? Or what would you have said to me? So one of the memories that came up when I was talking to my girlfriend, when I was 15 years old, I had been dating a guy for a year, and I got on birth control pills. Very young. My parents were divorced at the time, and I told my mom that I was going to go to Planned Parenthood and get on the pill. And I said, I'm just letting you know, this is what I'm doing. I don't need your permission. I'm just letting you know so that it's not a secret, but please don't tell dad. This is what I said to her. They were divorced. I'm like, don't tell dad. I know how he's going to handle it. Well, I actually didn't know how bad he was going to handle it. So my dad was very young. My dad was so I was 15. My dad was only 32, 33 at the time. And he was graduating from law school. And so we went to Olive Garden. There was this table full of people there. And one of the guys was talking about how his little brother thought I was attractive. My dad got up out of his seat, went over to that guy, whispered in his ear. They laughed. He came back. And I just knew in my head, he just told that guy I'm on the pill because my mom told my dad. Okay. Oh, and I'm sorry. The reason that I knew that my dad knew is because I went to his house that weekend and I still remember the clothing that I was wearing because it was soaked in tears as he just berated me for an hour about what a whore I was for being on the pill. Well, then after that, we went to the Olive Garden. And so I knew that he was telling this guy that. Well, then the guy across the table from us was going to be his best man in his wedding that was coming up in a few months. And this guy said, well, I want Michelle to walk, because I was going to be in the wedding too. Well, I want to walk down with Michelle and then I want to take her out on the balcony and basically and have my way with her. This is what he said in front of my father. My dad right in front of me says, well, she's safe, if you know what I mean. And I had to sit there through the rest of that meal acting like I didn't know what was happening. And I was dying inside. And I brought that memory came up for me. And I don't remember what happened in current day, but that memory came up for me. And I invited Jesus into that space. And as I was sharing this with my friend last week, I started crying and I said, these tears aren't because of what happened in that moment with my dad. These tears are because that memory that I created in my head with Jesus reinforced how much he loves me. So in my time, while I was just sitting there, just like asking him to enter that scene, he came in and he turned over those tables in Olive Garden and came over to me and just held me and said, this is my daughter. And you will not talk to her like that. And having that memory healed what my dad did. I can't change the words that my dad said that day, but I can heal that 15-year-old. And I can show her that she is loved and that she did not deserve that. And that's something that I could not have provided for myself when I was 15. I did not have the tools. I just didn't. And now I have those tools and I can reparent that little girl in different ways. So I just think it's so interesting how the conversations that I have throughout the week and the conversations you guys have throughout the week and everything just kind of come together in these calls. But I hope that was helpful for all of you in just understanding the different ways that we can do that, the different ways that we can reparent ourselves and create a new memory to heal that part of us. Because otherwise, that's always going to get triggered. And it may still get triggered, but you can still go back and reflect and ask God or bring it to, and another thing you can do, if you don't know anybody, if you cannot think of anybody that would work well in that situation that you want to bring in, they don't have to be a real person. You can even bring in somebody that you saw on a show. Like Parenthood was one of my favorite shows, and they just did so well in the way that they interacted with one another and the way that they were with their kids. And just so, you can imagine that character, and I can't remember their names anymore. It's been so long since I've watched that program, but if there's any show that you are watching where you're like, boy, if he could have just been my dad, or if he could have just been my brother, right? And you can imagine them coming into that scene and how would they have handled that? Because the truth is, my dad was hurting. Now, that does not condone what he did, right? But now as an adult, like, I understand, like, my dad was molested when he was 14 years old by his best friend. Like, he has issues that he never healed from. And hurting people hurt people. But as a 15-year-old, I didn't know what my dad had been through. I didn't know any of that. All I knew was that my dad kept calling me a whore. But as an adult, I can step back and go, He was hurting. Now, that being said, I don't have a relationship with him. I have set a boundary. Unfortunately, my father has not changed. So I don't have a relationship with him. You can be healed and still set boundaries and still say, I will not tolerate that. I will not allow you to reopen that wound.